The Hundred Flowers Campaign, also known as the Hundred Flowers Movement, in Chinese, was a Chinese Communist Party program that encouraged China's intellectuals to submit different ideas, opinions, and suggestions, even criticism of the party and its policies. It was launched by Mao Zedong in May 1956, and it was underpinned by the phrase "Let 100 flowers bloom," which means to allow free expression and criticism. Many interpreted the Hundred Flowers movement as the Beijing Spring, which was a period of liberalization and ideological relaxation. After 1 year, Mao Zedong had abandoned his newfound tolerance for new ideas and opinions. The seeds of the Hundred Flowers campaign were laid by China's premier Zhou Enlai, who was a rational figure more tolerant of criticism and dissent than Mao. Zhou believed that China's artists and intellectuals had been unfairly silenced by the revolution, and he told the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee that intellectuals had much to offer the nation if they could be encouraged and given some freedom. However, in the Chinese Communist Party's point of view, intellectuals were people who could impose threat upon the communists with their knowledge. Anyway, some Chinese Communist Party leaders like Su Yang and Liu Shaoqi supported Zhou Enlai, and actually Liu was the first person to use the classical phrase suggesting that China should let 100 flowers bloom to develop something new from the old. At this stage, the campaign was only an internal debate among Chinese Communist Party leaders, and in April 1956, the debate attracted the interest of Mao, and the chairman came to support the Hundred Flowers idea. Mao's true motives to support this idea are still debated by historians nowadays, and some argue that Mao was prepared to tolerate a period of liberalization and free thought to promote socialism and to present it as a reasonable ideology that listens to the people, even those who do not agree. Others believe his support for the Hundred Flowers was a defensive move, since Mao wanted to minimize the chance of a democratic counter-revolution in China because he was panicked by events in Hungary and the Soviet Union. However, Mao's explanation offered in 1957 was that he supported the campaign as a trick to draw rightists and counter-revolutionaries into the open. The campaign was publicly launched on February 27, 1957, in a speech on the correct handling of contradictions among the people, and in this speech Mao praised the unity of China and the achievements of the nation. Mao also welcomed criticism of Chinese Communist Party policy and ideology, and after that speech he devoted himself to ensure these dissenting flowers would blossom, and he even assured writers would not be punished or marginalized for speaking their mind. The Hundred Flowers movement would change the nation, and Mao promised it would be as gently as a breeze of a fine rain. The first months of the campaign yielded only a gentle wave of public criticism and comment, most of it minor issues, and there was little significant criticism of Mao, the government, or the Chinese Communist Party. In the spring of 1957, after Mao demanded suggestions and criticism from his people, everything started to change, and millions of letters began pouring into the government offices, venting criticisms about everything from the lateness of public transport to Mao's personal conduct. Chinese Communist Party propaganda suggested that the Hundred Flowers produced an inflow of mild and moderate criticism, and the government came under siege from critics and letter writers, and while some accepted the criticisms at face value, Mao himself dismissed most of them as self-serving, ridiculous, or irrelevant. The Hundred Flowers gave way to a new purge called the anti-rightist movement, and between 300,000 and 550,000 individuals were identified as rightists, most of them intellectuals, academics, writers, and artists. The majority were publicly discredited and lost their jobs. A smaller number were forced into labor camps for re-education, and as with the earlier suppression of counter-revolutionaries and anti campaigns, thousands were also driven to suicide. So, what had begun in early 1956 as a promise of liberalization and tolerance finished in late 1957 with persecution, coercion, and brutality. And Mao intended most of the population, even women and children, to witness violence and killing to scare the population. Until now, the Hundred Flowers campaign is seen as a strategy devised by Mao in order to trap the opponents, but also to make it easier for him to impose his own views in the course of the political hardening that the repression would necessarily lead to. Finally, intellectuals, dissidents of Mao Zedong's ideas, and people in favor of capitalism were labeled as rightists and persecuted during the anti-rightist movement in 1957 to 1959.